And I can't quite see the chat window. Is that off to? Let's see.
People are starting to filter in.
Dean, at the bottom of your screen,
Mm-hmm.
if you mouse over it, you'll see the little chat bubble.
There it is. Oh, we have Justin coming in here. Good morning, Justin. And Harpreet, good morning. Victoria. Mm-hmm.
I actually recognize one name.
It's good. There's one person you know. There it is. Hopefully, the other staff and students that'll be joining, none of them are skipping any lectures or, I imagine, any tests for the other students.
Yeah, we had a big event last night that was very interesting.
Oh.
We conducted it 100% in Chinese, and the focus was how to find happiness combined with success at work, like how to make the right trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
George, did you join that one?
No, I did not. As you know, I don't speak Mandarin. So. I know there's one coming up in next Tuesday. It's going to be fantastic too.
Absolutely, yeah. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah, we're going to do a quick review of the art of networking. Most folks, I don't know if I mentioned that in my Inspire conference. Most people are told use networking to kind of learn about people and process, but nobody ever tell them how to do it.
Yeah, that's true. And I imagine maybe I'll ask this question once we have more people, but especially for those that are relatively unseasoned to networking, I don't know, we had this chat during your Inspire presentation. It's hard not to come off as needy, yeah. Especially for new people or those new to networking rather. It can be a challenge.
It's okay to be needy. I mean, we all are needy in some way, but actually you should come across it to people that how you can help others. It's the best way introducing yourself to a network, because there's always somebody you can help, right? If you're in college, you can help high school students. In high school, you can help elementary students. You are in a neighborhood, you can help other people to learn about a neighborhood. There's always a way we could help other people. And that's the essence of networking.
Yeah.
There you go. You don't have to show up next Tuesday.
Well, hopefully we can spend some of the Q&A going a little deeper. You might share a few more nuggets that gets them interested in.
Yeah, if there's it depend on the audience. I don't want to pretend to know that I'm going to lecture anybody, but.
Well, I'm going to sprinkle a little networking into my discussion, so that may trigger some questions.
Yeah.
It would be great fertile ground for you to.
I'll look for you, Q. I'm here to listen and learn from you, my friend.
Oh, come on.
Is that what you want me to say? I think that's what you want me to say.
That's what I paid you to say, remember?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this is being recorded. I got to behave myself.
Yeah.
Okay. It's okay. I'm paying you in Venmo, remember?
For those that are joining us, it's about 11:05 a.m. I'm not sure if we should wait a little bit longer or if we should begin, but maybe we'll give it another minute or so. Thank you for joining us for those that are here, and we'll begin in about a minute or so.
Josh, just wanted to say that this event, it's a great example of networking. I met you a long time ago and look where we are. You're still supporting our students. Thank you for that.
You're telling your age. Was that 40?
Did Manuel tell you about his trip? I can't mention his trip. Never mind. Just
It's being recorded.
there's a trick to looking younger, and that's to drink unicorn blood.
Oh, okay. There you go.
You can get your hands on it. You know, it might be selling for about $301 per deciliter or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I can sell that.
Or 1 Bitcoin.
Or 1 Bitcoin. Yeah.
Seems cheaper that way.
It's not unicorn. Maybe it's a unicorn. Anyway.
Okay. It is 11:06 a.m. Let's. I think it's a good time to begin the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. For those that don't know me, my name is Dean Lorenzo. I'm a student at Red River College Polytechnic, located here in Winnipeg. And today, the presentation will be redefining resilience. We're joined by Marc Naddell and George Mui. Let me start off by introducing Marc here. 1 second here. Okay, Marc has a dynamic career spanning continents and industries, and roles have provided Marc Naddell with executive success leading geographically diverse organizations in Asian, European, and US-based companies. Referred to as a technology frontiersman, Marc has innovated and marketed solutions using emerging technologies such as AI, Internet of Things, LBS, wireless, and software platforms to create devices, networks, services, and ecosystems. Along his unique journey, he lived and worked around the world and conducted business in over 40 countries and Fortune 50 and startup companies speaking English, German, French, and Mandarin. And if you ask him, he knows a little bit of Cantonese too, but maybe not the friendly words. Marc's education includes a master's in management from the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, along with communications coursework from Stanford, and professional training on media relations, cross-cultural communications, and effective presentations. As a corporate spokesperson, his efforts resulted in awards and recognition for the offerings of various companies that he represented to analysts and journalists, including Top Global 100 Startup by Electronics Engineering Times, New Product Innovation Award for AI Chips by Frost & Sullivan, and Silicon Top 60 Startup by EE Times, and Best Developer Program Award by Evans Data Corporation. From his earliest days, Marc was drawn to creating and inventing, even being designated as a master innovator for his 20 patent awards by the executive management team of Motorola for his talents in envisioning compelling solutions and describing the technologies and methods for making them realities. He applied his creativity into branding, business models, ecosystem creation, and reinventing himself for the different chapters in his career. He's recently founded and runs new companies based in Silicon Valley, one being ROCS Global, the Results-Oriented Consulting Services Incorporated. This company works with organizations focused on market expansion, as well MindT Coach, a platform which accelerates growth and accelerates for professionals and leaders by providing driven individuals with their own board of directors for their careers. Marc, thank you very much for joining us today, and please take the floor.
Thank you. And are you going to be driving the slides today?
I will. No, I am not.
Shall I?
That's under the impression you're taking them.
Okay, I can do that. Give me 1 second.
Quite happy.
I apologize. That was the arrangement with the previous class.
In the
Okay.
last
Share my
take,
screen.
please.
Okay. Can
We have
everybody
visual
see
contact.
my slides now?
Looks perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So I had originally prepared this presentation for the Inspire conference, and because of technical difficulties, we decided to run this spin-off event. so I could have enough time to present what it means to redefine resilient and be resilient, share my insights, give a few examples, and then have a Q&A with my partner, George Moy, which will have a Q&A at the end of this session, at the end of this presentation. So redefining resilience and using the Inspire Conference matrix of topics, I wanted to also identify what I had to leverage in becoming resilient in my own journey, such as being innovative and using my talents as a visionary and being one step ahead of the threat, which is partly linked to being visionary, if you can use your imagination and see what's coming, and then solving people's problems. One way to work your way out of a corner is, of course, to provide value to others that will come in and help you and build bridges and help either fix your solution or provide a path forward. I've always been defined by people who know me best as a square peg trying to get into a round hole. And it's basically the story of my life. It's not something I aspire to or have to work hard at. I don't have to work hard at it at all. It's just my nature, I guess, to be blessed as slightly different. And, one of the expressions I always used is I would never work retail. And that's because I had to work retail once during college. I had to work full time for the past few years of my college life, get my undergrad. And one of the roles I tried was working retail in an electronics store. And it was like the worst use of my talents. I'm a creative person. I don't like lots of rules. But when I cook a meal, I don't use a recipe, and that's like the opposite of success in retail. The second thing is, as Dean mentioned, I'm a technology frontiersman. I love working on a technology when it's emerging, when it's new, when it's a clean canvas, waiting for an artist to apply paint and give it structure. And as soon as the technology starts to mature, it starts looking like a recipe book. And that's not where my talents are best applied. And since I'm used to working on the technology frontier, I'm used to starting out with few resources and having to sometimes source resources in the frontier, working with partners, or finding better tools than the traditional tools to solve problems. So I've always been a hands dirty type of leader. Maybe a player coach is the way another person would describe that. And it's one of the factors that contributed to my resilience, is being able to empathize with the people who are working with me on my team, or my colleagues I'm working with, or even my partners. It allowed me to connect, which was a great asset in building a strong, resilient network that could then be leveraged in times where your opportunity was surfacing new challenges, or when you were encountering setbacks in funding or support. As Dean also read from my bio, I reached corporate executive level with companies headquartered in Asia, Europe, and the United States. And I use that experience as a coach. I'm more of a mentoring style of coach. And I coach people on assertiveness, which is definitely what you need to be resilient. Stick to your guns. Also in communications, because when you're in trouble and you need to persuade people to open, to give you funding, or to give you support, or to throw you a line to get out of there, you're going to need those communication skills. And for the past decade, I've been an entrepreneur working in startups and starting startups like ROCS Global, a company that is now run by one of my partners from my time there, and my new platform, which is Mighty.coach. It's a coaching platform. I call it Spotify plus Airbnb for coaching. You can personalize it. You've got a marketplace of coaches and talent, and it's focused around getting people to be more professional, achieve their goals, and ascend the ladder if that's their target. My superpowers, everybody needs to know what their superpowers are. My superpowers are very high levels of creativity and grit. I have tremendous amounts of grit. And the more grit you have, that's a multiplier. If you're a gritty person, if you're determined and you will dig in for something worthwhile, that will multiply all your other talents. So if you're gritty, congratulations. Now I have just a ton of examples, not only my own examples, but the examples of people I've coached, people I've mentored, people I've worked for. So I have way too many examples for a 40-minute slot. In some cases, I feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. Just too many things I could be targeting here. So I'm just going to stick on a few key examples during this presentation, and I'll refer to them frequently throughout the slide deck. Now, what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to be happy and successful, again, after something difficult or bad has happened. And it isn't always a setback. It can also be that you have this exciting opportunity in front of you and you jump on it. It may be the opportunity of a lifetime. And as you engage with it, you're finding that the ambition level you need is far higher than you anticipated. And that happened to me with when I joined Nokia. Motorola was in trouble back in the early 2000s, and I was running the ecosystem program. Back then it was called developer program. It's what a phone company will offer to software developers to write apps for their devices. Now nowadays, in the age of iPhone, the App Store and the Google Play market, everyone just takes it for granted. That's just been there forever, but it wasn't. Back in 2000 and shortly thereafter, management teams in tech had still not bought into the concept of using third parties to fulfill the consumer and customer desires. And that's the area, that's the tech frontier I was working on, is creating a program to attract software developers in to write apps for Motorola phones, right? And as Motorola was encountering tough times and setbacks and losing market share, I reached out to my network. I wanted to find a different company, one with vision, that would see what I was working on and would respond. And Nokia was the big leader back then, 50% market share. They were creating software platforms. And so I reached out to a friend who knew somebody over at Nokia, used my network, and they were ecstatic to talk to me because in my short time in that role at Motorola, just a couple years, I had created a boutique program that was attracting branded content in, all these branded titles from Bandai and Atari and all these kinds of, arcade games were now flooding into Motorola. And also I was key in forging a relationship with MTV, around content for their channel. And so Nokia flew me over and I had interviews with them. And it's funny because during the bank of interviews I had, one VP said, "Why should we hire you to be an expat in Finland? You will cost us the same as hiring 5 local people. Why should we consider such an expense?" And I said, "Well, I think you know that answer, because if you could hire 5 people instead of me, why would you fly me over here for a week of interviews?" And that's all I had to say, right? But that's knowing yourself and knowing your situation, and without being a smart aleck, just saying it very calmly. "Well, I think you already know, right? Why are you talking to me, right?" So I got that opportunity, and here's the gotcha. When I say sometimes a challenge will unfold after you get an exciting opportunity, is my first day on the job, I said, "Okay, I'm here to launch the program. And what's the requirements and everything?" And so, "Oh, we have no clue. We don't know." I said, "You don't know?" So it was a little odd because you spent all that money to hire me, bring me over, right? And you don't have any plan. You don't have a clue, right? "But what about research?" "No, we haven't done any research." "But you have 80 days to launch this program. You have to research it, define it, get approval, and launch it in 80 days because we have a 90-day probation. We have a 90-day probation for new employees. So that's where all kinds of stress. So if I wasn't resilient, if I wasn't determined, if I wasn't confident, I may have folded and started interviewing or backed out of that opportunity. But I doubled down. I doubled down and I worked my butt off. I was there, first person in the office, leaving way after everyone else had left, working through weekends. You know, I started the job on December 3rd, 2003. And my daughter was due in January back in the US. So, you know, I had a lot to fight for, and I was going to make it happen. And I did everything. So it's, on this chart, it says live or die. That was a live or die. If I didn't launch that program and if it didn't excite people, you know, after I launched it, I was just going to be gone. And they would save all that expense of having me relocate and make, you know, the money. So I learned how to design websites because they hired an outside contractor who said, what do you need, right? I created business models that would attract and retain and excite and activate software developers for Nokia. I worked with the tech support team to figure out what hooks from their tools needed to be on the website. And I created the whole thing. I got funding. There wasn't a budget for it. I had to go, you know, convince management we're going to have to spend this money, create this website that had all this workflow. I had to write all the web content, tons of pages. I had to design every workflow and get the approval of all those teams. But I made it happen. That's grit, right? The creativity, the vision, what would be perfect for Nokia, sell them, get them excited, get the budget, and make it happen. So that's one example of how a challenge can all of a sudden present opportunities to be resilient and discover yourself. The second example is setbacks. This is after you've got something going and you're really enjoying it. You've already accomplished things, and then all of a sudden stuff happens. So my dream job came after Nokia. In fact, my dream job came because of my success with Nokia. One of Nokia's partners was called Navtech, and they were the leading map technology company back in the mid 2000s, right around 2006, 2010. That was the map you should be using if you were selling a solution that included a map, right? And so the setback came. Let me build this up first. Is Navtech was one of our partners at Nokia, and they just loved this ecosystem they were experiencing. They were finding customers, they were launching solutions, they were getting visibility. So they asked around and said, who's the guy responsible for this program that we're experiencing from Nokia Pro? And they all pointed to me. So the senior VP at Navtech at one of our events approached me and said, would you ever be interested to return to Chicago and work for us? Are you looking for an opportunity? It'd be a vice president role. And that was my first opportunity to become an executive. And I was like, this would be a greenfield, complete greenfield. And Navtech was this company, just high margin, dominant, the big player in the map industry. So I was all over it. And the boss, the guy who was approaching me would be my boss. He was a visionary person. And he worked for one of the greatest CEOs I've ever met, the ex-Disney, alumni of the year, University of Chicago Business School, you know, just a brilliant, brilliant guy. And they both loved me. They both supported me. And I came in and built a huge team and, built out all kinds of processes. We engaged with partners. And then my boss left the company. And then we had what we call a yay boo. Yay, we got acquired, and boo, things were going to change, right? We got acquired for $8.2 billion, which was great for everyone who had options. I had some. And then the acquirer was Nokia. And they had a very different vision for how maps were going to be used. And the situation changed dramatically because the person who is now my supervisor was not a big fan of developers. He was in charge of sales. And for him, those developers were a distraction away from the big customers like BMW and Mercedes and Chrysler and Toyota, right? So he saw my requests for funding, or the fact that I had, 40 to 50 people on my team, as kind of a drain on resources. And it wasn't helpful that Nokia didn't like us selling to other device makers. So there were all these pressures coming at us. So we had to get very creative to show new value. So our strategic role in the company had evaporated quite quickly, and we were put on a quota for revenue generation. So we had to stimulate new avenues where we can contribute value. So we engaged with companies like Intel and Amazon and brought our salespeople in to pitch that we could get developers for their platforms and their websites and their cars. We were finding apps for BMW. We were finding apps like car locating apps, right? And fuel efficiency, green driving apps for Mercedes and Audi. So all of a sudden we were creating a new value to preserve what we had. But that's just another example of how you can be resilient and not give up and not just fold and not just leave, right? So we were able to exist another 3-4 years, still delivering value, still enjoying our work, and still learning and growing. A lot of the people in our team got to rotate jobs, got to learn new skills, got their promotions, and it was good work, high paying. Okay, so the first thing I would say for anyone who wants to be resilient is know yourself. So there's 3 areas that you should really know yourself. One is your level of commitment, right? So what's your level of determination in your career? Some people have more of a focus on work-life balance, or, maybe career isn't as important to them. It's a different story. How much energy will you apply to your work? And what's driving you? The second thing is your abilities. What are your skills? What are the experiences you can leverage in your career? And experiences is really where your network comes from. The roles you've had, the people you've met, is your bridge into networking. That's your exposure. And then the third thing is your nature. What are your innate talents? What are the activities you enjoy doing? What are your interests and how do those overlap? And what's your personality? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Are you a planner? Are you an opportunist? So I recommend this link here, and I hope everyone's going to get this presentation or access to it after this event, because you can find a number of great assessment tools there. My favorite is 16 Personalities. I do a lot of coaching on that actually in my practice at Mighty. But you may find others there that are more specific to where you have questions. Second is collect the tools for your own personal resilience toolbox. So there are many recommendations for tools, but these are mine as it regards to resilience. First is emotion management. See, now this is the thing I had to learn from scratch. When I entered the workforce, I'm naturally an introvert. I like to sit and work on things by myself. I love to learn. I love to create. I hate interruptions, and I don't like people messing up my beautiful designs, right? But I had to learn if I wanted to reach executive levels or even just management levels, I had to control my emotions, because my beautiful plans, when I present them, people will have questions, they don't understand them, or they have suggestions how to make them better or different or add some additional capability. So I had to learn, first of all, that was all positive, that they're just trying to help, that in many cases their feedback is useful, not just because some of those ideas will make my design better, but also it's letting me learn what's not going to work when it goes beyond my direct control. When I try to launch it, some people are going to see this thing and they're going to have the same reaction as these people giving me this immediate feedback, right? So emotion management is critical. I would say that's the first thing you got to do. So you don't overreact, you don't panic, you don't scare away your allies, and you don't scare away your own team. Emotion management. Second, can do, can learn attitude. Oh, let me go back to emotion management. Remember I said there was a boss who inherited my team at NAVTech, right? And we had no chemistry at all, and he was extremely harsh. And regardless of what he ever said or done or threatened, I never overreacted, I never complained. He once looked me in the eye one-on-one and said, if you ever go behind my back, you're done. Which meant, if you ever go talk to that CEO again who loved me, he was gonna axe me, right? Because CEO was hearing great things about what we're working on, and he didn't like it. But I still found ways to get in front of the CEO because the CEO liked to have little gatherings. And that would be my window to go in and tell him about something fantastic we're working on that my boss would never share with the CEO. See, but I would not overreact one-on-one, right? And when budgets got cut, don't panic, don't complain, just find new ways to get other teams to give you funding for what you're trying to do, or work with a partner, have them sponsor an activity. So emotion management, so critical. Second, can do, can learn attitude. Remember when I was in Finland, right? And they unleashed, you got to go get the requirements, you got to define the project, you got to sell it to the management, get your funding, launch it within 80 days. I was like, okay, I really want this to happen. It's right in my wheelhouse. It's going to take creativity and grit. I'm 100% about that. I'm not afraid. I can do it. I will do any part other people won't do. I will just look for other people to do the rest of it, right? I will try to persuade people it's in their benefit this program happens. Get them to contribute. Get them to speak up for more budget, more funding for their parts, right? Positive outlook, positive energy. In the worst of times, a leader needs to sell hope. You need to be the source of optimism. If there's a 1% chance you guys can do it, let's all get together and focus now. Let's figure out how we're going to make that 1% become a reality, right? Hopefully you're not in a 1% success position. I don't think I've ever been in one. But if you want to keep your team, keep them focused and have a chance, you have to sell hope. You have to be a source of hope and inspiration. And fourth is your brand. A lot of people in the workforce don't understand what that means. Brand isn't something you advertise. That it doesn't create your brand. Advertising does not create your brand, right? The person who buys a Mercedes gets activated by the ad to buy a Mercedes. But the first time they got impressed with Mercedes is the first time they sat in one, right? They sat in it and they're like, this is not like my old, AMC Pacer at all. This is really a great experience here in this leather back seat. So the ads then come in and remind that person what that experience was and shape it, right? Talk about the premium leather, the smooth ride, the no sound coming in from the outside, the smooth acceleration, whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a Mercedes. It could be, a Cadillac. But as it regards to your career, your brand is what other people experience when they interact with you, right? How polished you are, how collaborative, how convincing, how articulate, how knowledgeable. Whatever those elements of your brand are going to be remembered is what they get from you. If you just sit like a limp dish rag in a meeting, they may not even remember they met you, right? So just remember, brand, it originates from you. It's every touch point people have, whether it's an email, whether they're discovering your LinkedIn profile, or they're meeting you face to face at an event or in a meeting, that is your brand. And your brand is critical to affect your networking. You want to have the right brand for the network you need to cultivate. So that's the second thing, is collect the tools for your own personal resilience toolbox. The third thing is create your I. I call the I my bucket list for career. These are all the things personal and career related that were related to what my job was, whatever job I was taking. And I don't want to go into detail on that, but you'll notice the blue ones are career goals achieved. The green ones were personal goals achieved. And the yellow are goals in process, and red is ain't happening. So I still don't think I'm going to retire by 35, basically because I'm not 35 anymore and I didn't retire. So that's an easy one. But you'll see some of them overlap together, like live in California and work on emerging technologies. Those overlap because it's more likely I will work on emerging technologies if I live in California. So those work together, combined, and were a key focus for me on both levels. Fourth, commit to resilience. We were making jokes about commitment before we started this event, all of us here on the panel. So there are animals that participate in breakfasts across the USA. Chickens and pigs are included, but only the pig is 100% committed to your breakfast. And how can you act with commitment? First, have that mindset. If there's any difficulties, challenges at all, suspend your disbelief. Be willing to accept failure. If you're looking at a chance for failure, examine what are the repercussions of failing. Grapple with it up front. What happens if I lose my job? Well, I'm going to have to find a new job, right? Maybe I have to move. Maybe I have to move back in with my parents. Can I deal with that? Is that an option? Right? So you work through it, and it helps to take some stress off if you deal with it up front instead of leaving it unresolved as you're trying to make these commitments. Then accept success without perfection. Perfection may be something that you really want, you strive for, but don't let perfection be the enemy of success. You aim for perfection and you don't accomplish the minimum viable product you need to continue the fight. And be flexible. One of my favorite quotes down there is from Tony Robbins. Stay committed to your decision, but stay flexible in your approach. If the budget doesn't come through to finish the project, go find partners, right? Or find some alternative way to implement. And then take actions. Don't sit and continuously collect more alternatives and more options. Give a reasonable amount of time to cultivate a few options. Analyze those as best you can within the time frame, and then take action. Make your commitment. And when you take your commitment, take your action, be the most determined. You or your group, be the most determined players on the battlefield. That will scare off most of your competition. And then you can just focus on competing on who's left. Don't keep it a secret. Just get out there. And cultivate allies. Find people who share an interest in your success. The outcomes will benefit them, and have them come in and collaborate or give you funding or make introductions, whatever they can do. This is getting over to the networking again, and I know George and I are probably going to cover some networking in the Q&A. So I have a 3+1 system, I call it, for resilience. First of all, have the right perspective. This is you could say a cousin to having a growth mind, is just know that stuff happens, right? Just be aware that the world is dynamic, industries are dynamic, companies are dynamic, people change, and how you start, the landscape you start on may not be the landscape you operate on or finish in. So instead of saying, oh, I'm so darn unlucky, or why did this happen to me? Forget that. That's not productive at all. Just say, hey, when you drive in a car, you might get in a wreck. The point is, try to avoid them, try to survive them. And it's the same thing with the perspective of challenges, right? If you're Ready for that up front. When a challenge happens, it'll be easier to maintain your emotion, the emotion management. Second thing, be purpose-driven. When you're in a challenge, when you're in a stressful situation, timelines change, funding's gone away, be purpose-driven in where you spend your time, in where you put your efforts, in how you apply the resources. And third, hone your positive energy, reflection, assessment, having a growth mind. If you've ever heard of a famous British explorer, Shackleton, he was leading an expedition to the Antarctic back around the time of World War I, when there was an unusually colder and stormy winter. Then his ship got stuck in ice, eventually got crushed and sank, and he had to take his men and trek across frozen ice covering the Antarctic Ocean to reach land. And it's amazing, over the, I think it was 3 years, these people survived on their own. He didn't lose one single person. And he did it with positive energy, selling the hope, keeping them focused on the being purpose-driven, how to go fish, how to get water, how to stay warm, how to make progress continuously, getting back to civilization. And the fourth step here, the +1, is more tactical. When you're making your commitments and you're executing, be disciplined. First of all, update your to-do list every morning. Before you get your breakfast, you should go through your to-dos, make sure what you missed yesterday is the first thing you're doing today if it was supposed to be done yesterday. Respond to those urgent emails, update your calendar, send out those invites, nail a few tasks, pay a few bills. You'll feel so much better when you crush a whole bunch of small tasks first. You'll feel energized all the way up to second breakfast or first lunch. And the other thing I like to recommend is, if you have big projects you're working on, book those schedules, those slots in your schedule, 3-4 hour chunks if necessary, just to make sure you get enough time to concentrate and make progress on those really important but maybe not urgent tasks, because those will catch up with you if you're not putting in the focus time on big projects, budgeting, performance reviews, all those things that really need you to focus and sink in. Block out the times in advance. Okay. So that's what I wanted to preload my presentation on. I hope that all of you have gotten at least 1 or 2 useful things out of that. And now I'm going to turn it back to Dean.
Yes. Thank you, Mark. That was an excellent chat, or excellent presentation. I have some questions, but for now, I'll quickly introduce George, if he's still here with us.
Yeah, I am.
Great. We'll be doing a little bit of a panelist discussion next, but allow me first to introduce George, for those that don't know him. Just give me 1 second here. George works, 1 second here. Okay, George has successfully made his career transitions from research and development to business management, small business to large corporation, private to nonprofit organization, and then to public sector by leveraging his technology background and acquiring his business acumens. His communication and people skill allow him to build a global network of collaborators to support his clients. George has recently retired from the US Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency after 11 years of public services from 2008 to 2019. His innovative programs earned George 2 MBDA National Director Awards in 2010 and 2017. He served as a senior advisor for the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as a special assignment from 2014 to 2016, where he was responsible for the business portfolio and providing AAPI small business across the nation. Prior to joining MDBA, George served as SBA's Small Business Development Center Director at the Asian American Alliance, where he's provided consulting services to small businesses in Chicago from 2006 to 2007. He was also the president of the New World Connections Incorporated, an independent consulting company specializing in international business development and personal training from 2000 to 2005. He's completed a successful career at Lucent Technology that spanned 19 years as a software engineer, network architect, project manager, and finally as a project management and marketing director in the data communication unit, where he grew his business unit from $120 million to $400 million in just 3 short years. His George's community advocacy awards include the Asian American Hall of Fame in Chicago for his community services in 2011, the Asian American Coalition of Chicago Chinese American Community Service, an award in 2016, the American Community Service Award from the Illinois Cook County Treasurer's Office in 2016, and the Community Leadership Award by the Midwest Asian American Association of Chicago in 2018. He's a founder and moderator for the Asian American Executive Network, founded in 2013. AEEN is a national informational advocacy group for the Asian American professionals and entrepreneurs that grew to 1,500 strong today. He's currently serving on the IFF organization board. That's an advocate company for nonprofit organizations in the Midwest. He has a bachelor and master's degree in computer science from the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. He's completed 2 executive education programs at Stanford University in marketing and business management. And George is married with 2 children right now. We're just going to open up just the panel of discussions here to George and Mark. And I'd just like to start off by asking a question here. It seems like a lot of, though you don't really talk about it much here at Mark, sales is really a huge part of everything that you do. And it's not easy, whether you're selling an idea, you're selling the cohesion of your team to stay together, you're selling them the hope that in that 1% success rate or the 1% chance of success, you've got to sell them the idea that you will be successful. Can you maybe discuss briefly how you feel sales? Did you ever do sales first off? And then are there any techniques that you borrowed from sales in order to make your career as successful as it has been?
First, let me say that every day where you have a career, you are probably selling.
Okay.
Selling is not exclusive to salespeople. Every day you're selling yourself as part of your brand, as you engage with people, as you interact. Even if it's in writing, if you're giving someone a proposal, a recommendation, even asking for help, you're convincing them to exchange with you.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer, yes, I did sales when I was in college. One of the things I did part-time was phone sales. I was selling memberships to a hotel club. There was this hotel that had a fancy resort-like layout, and they would sell memberships for spring to locals. So they gave me a phone book and said, you know, you have to deliver X number of sales per day, right? So that was a really hard way to learn how to convince people without being face-to-face, just calling Mr. Joe Smith, how are you today? And then make your sale, right?
All right. And George, did you?
Question, or was there a second part I didn't address?
No, that answers my question. Yep. And George, did you? I don't quite know if you've happened to, if you've been an entrepreneur as well. I imagine that sales is part of your forte. But for those that don't realize how important sales really is, can you maybe just give like a little bit of word of advice for those that don't actually enter into any sales training programs?
Yeah, I don't know that you need to enter a sales training program, but the mindset is sales. And like Mark, I haven't done a lot of sales, in the exception of one summer, I was a door-to-door salesman for encyclopedia for 1 week. I made one sale, cover my costs, and they decide I'm not a salesman. But you know, the whole idea of career management, we always talk about, is a sales job, right? And in fact, for Mark's training coaching program, I tap my career management program as art of closing the deal. closing the deal in the sense that every step of the way is, we call it, some people call it moment of touch. You are selling your brand, why you should get certain jobs, certain promotion, or even keep your job. That's a sales job by itself. You don't get return on $1 or $2 every time you make a sale, but you are making progress in closing the deal. And I agree with Mark 100% that career management or anything else, there's always sale. Even convincing my wife she need to wait 2 hours today before she goes to her sister because I'm talking to you guys. It's a sales job, right? And that is something that most students, most folks coming out of school, oh, I don't want to do sales. You're doing sales every day, every moment at a time. So I just want to get that. I totally agree with Mark. Every moment is sales.
Yes, that's exactly it. I echo what George said. Let me just leave the audience with this topic on 3 fundamentals of selling that apply to almost every facet of your life, especially career. The first one is if you target people who most need your proposal or your offering, you are increasing your chances of success, right? If you're asking people to make a decision and they're not the ones allowed to make the decision, you're wasting your time, for example. So if you have a proposal, work on the decision makers and any influencers to that decision. That's just one example of step 1. Pick your targets if you're going to be selling, proposing, influencing, whatever. The second step is understand their needs. What are the most important needs that you will fill or address with what you are proposing? If it's 5 benefits for this person, don't focus on the 5th most important benefit. Lead with the most important. Try to make your case on that. If they're on the fence, you can add the 2nd most important, right, to tip them over the edge. But don't throw 5 things at them, especially don't lead with the 5th most important. But you need to understand your audience to get to that 5. So ask a lot of questions. Ask people who know the decision maker that you're trying to approach. What's important to this person, right? What decision can they make, right? How can you get them to start? And then the third thing is once you've engaged with them and they seem really interested and they're leaning towards you and they're saying, wow, this is really good, maybe I should be doing this. The third step is ask for the order. A lot of salespeople don't want to risk getting a no, so they get the decision maker all spooled up and leaning in and opening up, and they feel great and they're like, I don't want to risk it, and they leave and they let the person cool off. When you have them spooled up, remember to ask for the order, ask for the support, ask for the introduction, ask for the sale. So
Close the deal. Close the deal.
Close the deal. That's right, George. That's something you've said many times.
That's an important, asking for the sale. People are often just, like you said, either too timid, too afraid to really ask for something. But much of the time, it just takes that yes or no question. Do you want this? Will you help me? Yes.
See, here's an example as it applies to non like salesman type of opportunity. People interview for a role and the person says, well, we haven't really defined what level yet. We're thinking director. And they're like, perfect, I'm a director. But they really want to be a VP, right? And they're talking to someone who could make it happen. But they're having such a great discussion. They're afraid of getting rejected. They're afraid of the person saying, oh, well, I think director's fine for you or whatever. But if they try to get the order for a VP, they could say, I really like this role. I really like this position. I like the team. I like the company. But what I'm considering right now, what I'm looking at right now are VP roles. Is that a possibility? Can we talk about that? Right? So instead of putting that out there and trying to get that order, they would rather leave the conversation just feeling good about what the influence they've already achieved with the interviewer. That's just one example.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to take a question here from, let's have a question from Chunman Ip. He has a question. This is for you, Mark. Although you have a ton of positive energy, but your team may not, how do you handle this? If I read it directly, he goes, although you have a ton of positive energy, but your team don't, what will you do?
Well, the first thing I would do, let's say I'm stepping into a new situation. I'm a new leader. I got a ton of excited, optimistic energy, but here's a team, maybe they've been stuck in a rut or they've only had failures, right? That's why they brought in a new boss. First thing I would do is a lot of one-on-ones and let them feel individually important. In fact, that's been a habit of mine ever since I became a VP. I'd go to a location with 10 people from my team. I'd have a 30-minute meeting at least with each person on that team. What do they do? What excites them? What challenges are they facing? What should we do differently? They all feel important. They all know that I'm going to put the effort in at my level. Then I bring them in as small groups, small teams, right? And try to talk about all the positives, all the opportunities, and have them brainstorm. Like, how could we be making changes ourselves? What are the things we can do as a team to help influence the outcomes? And once we get there, who can we invite in to share our positive energy, share our results, and get more allies coming in to help us, and then go to management, right? So, and then once you get the small teams energized, then you start bringing them together as a big team. And you share the energy and you celebrate successes. You let each team take turns coming up with their sub-team leader and say, here's what we're getting done, here's what we're achieving, here's where we need help. So that's how you turn the boat around and start getting everyone rowing together towards that spot on the horizon that we all want to get to.
Okay, and let's kind of reframe the question a little bit, because right now that's from like a very big picture, like senior management kind of level. I would imagine that Chunman may be asking this from a smaller perspective. I think about when you were early in your career and you were working with a small group of people. You're tasked to either code something or whatever goal you're trying to reach or achieve with your small team. This is now like you have a finite amount of time. Unfortunately, you can't quite take each of your individual team members out and have like a good 30-minute chat to hear their strengths and some of the positive things they could bring. Anyway, how might you do that in like a smaller level, on a small scale, with like a team that you're working with for the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, so the scope might be more focused and narrow with a shorter time frame and fewer people, but the methodology is still the same. You still need to make the people feel that they are valuable and have something important to contribute, each person, and that you think they're important. Even when you're in a team setting, you build them up and you bring up the contributions they make or the importance of their topic in the group discussion. So everyone understands you're a team, everyone has value, everyone has an impact on the goal. Now let's talk about how we're going to deliver this code in 2 weeks, right? What's the biggest obstacle to us delivering in 2 weeks that we can take on together? We may not get 100% there, but if we can be, instead of 50% off target to just 90% off target, now we're getting close. We may find other solutions outside the group once we solve what we can internally first. So get them going on things they can control, things they can impact, and let them interact and find out, what's the best outcome for the whole team versus individuals, right?
Right. Okay. And Chunman says, thank you, Mark. I got what you meant. It's valuable in a very good way. So thank you for asking the question, Chun. The next question comes from Justin Martinez, and we'll ask George this question first. It's for the two of you here. George, what are some of the key skills to be developing early in your career?
Well, I always preach the fact that everyone, regardless to stage your career, got to have a plan, a career plan. Right. And I don't mean that what are you going to do 20 years from now? I think 5 years is a good time frame, But the act of putting together a plan really require some of the steps Mark talked about: knowing yourself, knowing what you want, knowing what skill set you have, and how do you get, in some cases, earlier the better. What skill do you need to get to the job that you really want, whether it's something that you do in your current education program or something that you have to go outside of your current environment. And I know for a long time when I was a manager that I really don't want to R&D management. I want to do business management. So that's why I make the effort to took all the classes AT&T had offered. They have 18 classes in the AT&T School of Management back then. I took all of them, and then I took 2 years at Stanford, basically a summer program, 3 weeks, learn everything you want to know or afraid to ask about being an MBA, and also market management. Those things build a platform for me to complement with my skill set, which is mostly technology driven, into a business. And they allow me to be able to execute whatever plan that come ahead of me, which is business management. So those are things that I always encourage young people to think about. And most people don't go talk about career management until they get in trouble with a career. Like I lost my job, what I do. Right, we have to go back, right? We have to go back to the basics, and some of the basics Mark talked about. In fact, Mark and I have very similar idea in terms of how to think about yourself and how to prepare yourself for, in his case, talk about emergency cases. And I think young people don't do enough of that. And to set it, that part of it, the school doesn't teach you. The school do not teach you those things. Yeah. Anyway, that's my thoughts for your consideration, Justin.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and Mark, the same question. What are some key skills that you need to be developing early in your career?
Yeah, I'd agree with George that the career planning is something you should do your whole career, right? Every couple of months you should revisit some of the goals or directions, ambitions, and then every year at least a review of what might be ahead for your next 5 years and what's on your bucket list. Like I said, I always had this bucket list of things, right? And those would be helping me make decisions when I had opportunities. But I'm going to add to that, the people who find happiness at work are the ones who can be assertive in their environment. And assertive is like the balanced position of influencing people without bullying them or pushing them. And also knowing what the boundaries are, so you're not passive when people come up and ask you to do things or ask you to change your plan, that you don't just try to please everybody at the expense of your own satisfaction or your own goals. So assertiveness is a set of skills people can learn early on so that they get the respect and that they get to keep their focus on what's important to them and their commitments in their work life without being offensive and without being rude. That's assertiveness. The second one is communications, right? Because whether you're working from home or you're in the office or you're a sales guy on the road, interacting with people and convincing them to agree with you or to do what you're asking makes you feel better. When you're convincing people or they're accepting your ideas, you feel much better about it. You have less friction. So being able to communicate effectively, being able to assertively stay on your course, those are two sets of skills that will last your career.
Okay, thank you for that question, Justin. I'm going to take another question here from the chat. This is a question for both. And let's start off with George here. What's something you wish you knew early in your career?
Did you ask that same question in my presentation?
Yeah, this was similar. Okay, that was kind of.
One thing I wish I know is I know Mark earlier in my career.
Okay, that's
no,
good.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So, Victoria.
Well, one thing I really learned. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
The one thing I really wish I learned is really the ability the ability to collaborate more. And I think my career success, however successful is defined, is based on the collaboration and working with people for a common goal. And I don't do enough of that early in my career. It's all about myself, because I was looking to finish my task, looking for finish what the management want, give them what they want. I think in the process, I could spend more time helping other people, which I learned very quickly. That's a way to build up your network, helping other people, but don't ask for anything in return. But eventually, they'll come help you out. And that's one thing I wish I learned a little more early in my career.
Okay. And yeah, this was pretty much a question that was asked by Justin. So maybe I'm not sure if Victoria had missed that question, but
No, I would add to that too. Something, I mean, I had the same challenge George had. I mentioned that in my presentation. I just was afraid of people trying to change my design, so I would work by myself and then just unleash these like very complete plans and just force them through. I would just leave lots of dead bodies behind my wake as I pushed this through and made it happen. So that's one thing I agree with George. The second thing is a different thing I wish I knew is I had so many opportunities being a standout performer in marketing in the tech world. I had so many senior level people that were probably dying for me to go to their office and pick their brain, right? And for them to become my mentor or for them to take me under my wing. But I was too insecure at that time. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to know that by being willing, being more vulnerable, asking for feedback from those senior level people, they probably would have volunteered to mentor me and move me along faster and coach me, right? So that's something, is have the confidence to be vulnerable, right? And ask for feedback of people. Ask for their corrections. How would you make this better? What's missing? And then accept it and be thankful and try your best to improve your design with their feedback. And you will accelerate. You will grow faster. You'll have more opportunities. And the initial foundations of your network will be so much thicker and stronger and reach farther.
Hey, Dean, I have one thing to add.
sure, yes.
I was a programmer and not a very good one, I don't think. But I was, like Mark, I was really upset when people talk about a potential
Changes.
problem with my code.
Yeah.
Then they introduced this concept, this is kind of old man talking, egoless programming, which is the idea of introducing code inspections. Right now, not only will be individual, but there's a team of people picking up and picking on your code, and you supposedly don't feel like you're being attacked. And that's why I learned not to feel like I'm being attacked when people offer me feedback the hard way, right? It took me a while to get over it, but that really helped a lot in terms of overall understanding of this is not about yourself, it's about the company, about the best way to deliver AT&T Bell Lab. We're supposed to have a 3-minute downtime a year, right? So that is a learning for me, and I think it's something that I'm not sure people learn it this way nowadays. But code inspection was new at then, and having a team of people offer you input in programming is also new for me at that time.
I want to say much of the time when people are often, let's say if you have code reviews or your work is being criticized by others, it's challenging to not view that as a personal attack on your work.
Yes, especially you think you're good.
But that's a good thing to have that emotional management, as Mark had discussed. Yep. Okay, let's move on to another question here. This is coming from Danilyn Sanchez. She asks, what technical qualities other than soft skills do you look for when hiring? Maybe you might not have been involved in the hiring process, but
Yeah, I I can take that, Maya, if it's okay. I hire a lot of people in my days, right? The first thing I gotta do is forget about emotional intelligence, forget about your people skill. Can you do the job they hire you for, which is deliver whatever technical part of the job, right? Which is in some cases this programming, and you gotta know the right languages. The fundamental behind the performance of the job is essential. Then if there's two candidates with the same background, I look for a person that is more with the better communication skill, people skill. So that is the fundamental, right? Because I need to meet my requirement when I manage a programming job or a business job. I need to meet my requirements so I get to keep my job. So Mark, I'm sure you have a lot more to add.
Yeah, so technical qualities is it's going to be very dependent on the role, right? So if I was going to hire someone designing chipsets, I'm going to look for them having been in a chipset design role for many years in the same company, in the same group, because chipsets have very long life cycles. And I'd want to see that they were successful enough to have that role or advance in that role, over a number of iterations of a chipset, right? So if you're asking for technical qualities on interview, I'd be like, was this person in the role for maybe 5 years? And, what successful launches or designs can this person talk to me about, right? And that's what I'd be looking for. Software would be completely different. It would be like, we have certain tools we use, we have certain platforms we work on. What's the evidence this person is capable on those tools and those platforms? And a lot of software people have written apps or they have demos they've created, and I'd want to see those. And of course, in all cases, since I'm not the technical person, after I had those discussions, I would have technical people on my team. I'd say, dig into this person's demo, talk to them about this tool, or in the hardware side, can you verify, their capability to contribute on that chip, right? So hardware, software, AI, all have very different criteria for technical evaluation. On the soft skills side, you said other than soft skills, one of the key things I look for in any person I interview is eagerness to be a part of this team. If they're not eager, I'm really not interested. I don't care how good they are. If they don't seem eager, cooperative, forthcoming, transparent, responsive, then if there's no chemistry and there's no excitement for the role, don't waste my time.
In other words, they need to do a sales job on you.
That's right. That's right. They have to want my order.
Maybe a retail sales job that way. Okay.
Which gets me to like a second slightly different answer is I don't want to hire somebody who doesn't need my job. Don't hire somebody who doesn't need the job. It's really hard to motivate someone who could care less if they're successful or fail to get fired, right? So that's just as an interviewer of talent. I'd never recommend someone who doesn't need the job.
Okay. Okay, we have another question coming from Lori Catrone. This is for you, Mark. How does one who is introverted or shy learn to be assertive?
Yes.
Most
Most people who learn assertiveness skills are introverts, because the people who are extroverts usually are aggressive. They need to tone it down, right? So the ones who make the most use of assertiveness training start out as introverts that are passive or avoiding. They either avoid discussions where they may get asked to change or to concede, or they just fold, right? So assertiveness begins with understanding your own requirements. So that favors introverts, because introverts like to study and like to think about things. And when they have a bad experience, they're more likely to pick through it and understand, like, how come people keep coming up and asking me to work overtime to help them on their work, right? And how come I keep giving up? So that's a good advantage for introverts to say, what do you need? What's your requirement to get out of the office at 5 o'clock like everyone else, instead of working overtime for other people, for free, basically, you're on a salary. So the second thing is being able to articulate your boundaries. Right? Once you know what you need, you say, hey, I have to leave at 5. I'm booked up until 5. I'm sorry, I'm not able to help you. Right? I have to deliver this thing for so and so. It's already committed. I suggest, maybe you stay late. Try and do it yourself. Right? So you learn, you understand your requirements, you set your boundaries, and then you articulate them. And even though people may come back and try to step over it, you can just calmly manage your emotion. Don't get excited. Don't back away. Eye contact is good. And just repeat very plainly. Well, it's like I told you. I have this commitment at 5 o'clock. I have to leave. So I suggest you might have to work overtime, right? Or go talk to your boss and get more resources, or whatever is part of your response. But it's really starting out with low stakes and learning this skill.
Right.
Like when you try to order something at a restaurant and you ask them to put the dressing on the side, and the waitress says, oh, they just mix it all up in the kitchen, and you always accept it, just because the waitress says no. And that's where you start, low stakes, non-career, or with friends. You develop this ability to understand your requirements, set your boundaries, and communicate those requirements and stick to it without getting emotional. That's how you become assertive. It's a process. It's like getting fit. You're not going to flick a switch or take a 5-hour energy and be like a whole different fit person. Mm-hmm. It's like getting fit, doing a few sit-ups a day until you can do 20, running 100 yards until you can, extend that and run a mile. It's assertiveness is a skill you develop by, first of all, wanting it, and then following the process I just outlined with you.
You mentioned assertiveness being the key to combining happiness and success at work. Have you ever seen other folks that have been able to employ that assertiveness and maybe not find so much of a balance between their happiness and success at work?
So can you rephrase your question?
Yeah. Have you seen someone that is assertive, but maybe after their assertiveness in their workplace, they're not able to find that happiness and success balance?
Sure. In the workplace, it's dynamic and it's probabilistic. So let's say I worked for a guy once. We used to refer to him as the psychopath.
Yeah.
He was a general manager at Motorola Networks. I'm not going to say his name,
right,
but he was a PhD in psychology, and he could rip anyone down just effortlessly, and he was not afraid to. Mm-hmm. So he's somebody that assertiveness would not work for. So your choice there is probably leave that group if you couldn't take it. But that's the extreme end of the continuum, right? Nobody convinced him of anything. When he had his mind on something, he came to your office, he had a request, you were going to do it, or you were going to be in trouble, right? But in the normal course of work, dealing with normal people who we don't refer to as psychopaths, right? Assertiveness depends a lot on how well prepared you are. If there is something important to you, you think about the requirement that you have, your goals, your focus, you're leaving at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night on time. And then you set the boundaries and you learn how to articulate that. If you're in an environment where that's frequently getting imposed upon, and over time, your success rate will increase. You'll get better and better at it, more comfortable delivering it. So it's a dynamic, and a lot of it has to do with how well you prepare, how well you execute, and how diligently you commit to being assertive in your life.
Okay. I'm curious to hear what your thought is on this, George. The success and happiness balance in the workplace. I imagine that probably early on in careers, people might experience burnout. And at the very beginning, you want to impress everybody, you want to be super productive, and you work very, very hard. After a certain point, my question, George, is how can you identify if you are successful with a balance with the success and happiness at work, and what can you do to change it if there's a severe imbalance?
Yeah, well, I could offer you one example. I was an 18-year Bell Laboratory. Working overtime is almost a requirement. And that didn't go so well with my wife because I'm always working. Then I realized at Bell Labs, you take late lab hours, like on the weekday, you don't get extra time. But you take a Sunday lab time, you get double pay. So instead of working late, I decided I'm going to start working Sunday. I have to give up some my own personal things, but I came home and said, hey, I got double pay today. And my wife said, oh, yeah, great. What can we use the money for? So you have to satisfy both your personal requirements and also people around you, and look for the silver lining. And I have no choice. If I'm on my job, I have to work those late hours because we're always getting squeezed and deadline. People like Mark coming in and say, hey, it's due now a month because my customer want this earlier. So programmer have no choice.
Right.
In fact, that they kind of drove me to business manager, thinking that I want to be the one making decisions instead of the business people on how long this takes to do these features and what time frame. But I always learned very quickly that you have to adapt the environment, figure out the happiness is given a little different for different people. For my case, I was very happy with my job, but my wife wasn't happy working all this extra time. But I kind of helped by understanding the rules a little bit and went to schedule my extra overtime. Nobody wants to work Sunday, I did. So I always get all the lab hours I want. In fact, the more I realized that I do Sunday, then weekday, I'm free. I can leave at 4 o'clock, right? And I still get the same pay, but then I'm much happier that way. And that's just one example of it that I had to deal with. Hopefully that helps.
If I could add to that, I often tell my coaching clients, money may buy you a house or a nice car, but a job that pays you more money won't necessarily make you happier. You have to find work that, even though it may be difficult, you enjoy working on it. If you have to work till 10 p.m. sometimes, at least you're learning something, or you're using your skills, or you feel like you're the only one who can do this work. You're going to get recognition. You're going to achieve something. I remember early in my career working on products and solutions, right? And I wouldn't mind working overnight to hit my target. Once a month at least, I pulled an all-nighter. Show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, work all night, and then at 8 o'clock in the next day, work the whole day and then go home. And it was that kind of passion to have the work done the way you want it done, right? So, sometimes you'd have a project where you have to work Saturday and Sunday. And even though you'd rather be doing other things, at least you're doing something that inspires you, that stimulates you, right? That you feel like when you're done with this, it's going to change your department. It's going to change your portfolio. And people are going to say, wow, thanks, that's awesome, right? You're going to feel appreciated. So that's really what you look for is, if you're looking for something where you're going to get rewarded, successful, and happy, pick a role on your career path where the work you're doing, it feeds you in a different way. It feeds your curiosity. It's building your skills. You don't feel you're just doing it for money. You're just exchanging time for money, because that leads to unhappiness. Any other questions?
It looks like there are no further questions, Your Honor. And
Your Honor. Because we talk about you, Your Honor.
But I am curious also, this is just like a tiny question, like happiness has, I mean, people look also, we spend so much time at our jobs, our careers often define who we are. Whenever you've changed careers, did you ever lose maybe a sense of identity? Thinking, well, I was a CEO at this company and now I'm no longer a CEO. You know, do you feel maybe much different in the new role? Have you ever had that problem where, yeah, like, I don't know if I'm making that quite clear, but did you lose a part of yourself thinking I should have never moved over to this new job for this opportunity? Like, what happens when you might feel that it was either not a good idea, or again, that piece of yourself is left behind at that other position? It's not a good feeling, I imagine. And
Yeah,
when you've experienced this, like,
I could speak to that easily because I had changed career like 4 times. Sometimes it's dictated by situation, sometimes my own desire. But I try not to take it as a personal setback when I make career change. I went from a corporate executive to entrepreneur. You make from $200,000 to nothing for 6 months. Right? So now people surrounding you might feel differently. Is this where you have to truly believe what you want to do and how you want to do it? And I felt like that's the path. I spent my 20 years in corporate, chased the corporate ladder. I felt like I want to do something for myself, which is in that case, international business development, international business consulting. I really enjoy it. I mean, I learned a lot traveling Asia with my partners. And my wife didn't because I'm away from home and not bringing in money at that time. But business development is just that. But I think it's truly believe is how you use happiness, how you make, how you feel within yourself, not what people are telling you that, hey, you were a corporate executive, now you're an entrepreneur, right? So it's the standard you have to set for yourself. Once you set that, I think you'll be happy. I've been pretty happy with almost my career, 40 years of different, go from corporate to entrepreneur. That didn't work out too well because of certain situation, to nonprofit and to the government, right? So there's a lot of various changes, stages where I feel like, okay, that didn't work out too well. But my attitude is always, okay, let's look at what other opportunities coming up, you know? So I felt like I have enjoyed my career very nicely. Even after I retired, now I'm working with Marc, right? And looking at doing some career coaching as part of my career coaching services and consulting. I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if you can tell, Marc, I really enjoyed working with you.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
yeah. Great. Do you have anything to add to that, Marc? Like where you might have had like a loss of identity or regretted changing over to a new role with a different company? How do you handle that? How do you maintain?
For every role, there was some change. Like when I transitioned from working for Motorola, which was like a thick carpet type of company. You know, when you traveled international, it was always business class. And, you know, you always stayed in like 5-star hotels everywhere you traveled, you know. And then Nokia was, of course, much more frugal, you know. That's just the nature. Finns are very conscious about costs. So you fly international, you'd be flying usually, you know, economy. And you'd stay in moderate priced hotels, right?
Mhm.
And, you know, very few people had offices. And offices, like in my floor, was, you know, I was one of the few, and you had all glass walls, right? Everyone could see you all the time. You had like living in a community, no privacy, right? Motorola, you'd go in your office, close the door, and you could just, you know, focus and no distractions. No one could see what you're doing, right? So there was kind of a culture shock going there. And then when I transitioned from corporate roles into being an entrepreneur, running my own company, working in startups, of course, you know, no secretaries when you start, and everything, you book your own travel, and you know, no budget, you know. Then sometimes you scratch your head, like, you know, what I get myself into. But then you remember that it's the job you enjoy and the lack of all the rules, that you have a clean palette in front of you. And that's what turns you on, is being creative and making things happen and being gritty, right? Being resilient and not having a big cushy corporate job where everything is dictated and defined, and kind of becoming more retail if you're in those big corporate environments. You know, it's sort of the trade-offs. You're kind of selling out in some ways, in my perspective, is you get the cushy environment and you have everyone doing everything, but you have no freedom to really act, right? So you have to consider the trade-offs. Why are you in the new role? What brought you there? And do those new benefits outweigh the things you lost? The business class travel, or the cushy, the cushy hotels, or the team of secretaries booking your meetings, right?
Okay, and this is not exactly this question comes from Henry. Is it possible to get a copy of your slides today, Mark?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will send them to Dean, and Dean can make them available for whomever at RRC, right?
Yes. Let me just leave my email address here. And for those of you that would like a copy of the slides, just send me an email and I could pass them along to you there. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't. Oh, and we also have George adding in his LinkedIn. If you'd like to add George onto your LinkedIn, I know maybe reference this this presentation, because sometimes if you get random people adding you, you think I don't know who this person is.
Yeah, I got about 500 waiting because I don't know who they are. Yeah.
Reference the Redefining Resilience or Inspire 2022, and you can add George onto LinkedIn there. Yeah. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for coming today. I was going to say this morning, but it's afternoon now in the Central Time Zone.
Yes.
Thank you for coming to chat with everybody today and have the presentation, Mark, and do the Q&A. If there are
I
no
enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Mark, for including me in this conversation.
Yes, and if I can just remind people that Mighty.coach is a platform. So George, myself, and a small army of other experts combine our diversified backgrounds and skills, and we form the board of directors for professionals and leaders who need advice, training, and guidance on their unique journeys in their career.
So connect, and
yeah, I just put the link on there. It's pretty simple, and you could find our profile and the service offering right there. Mark's done a great job of making this very, I would say, we're automatically easy access platform. And there's a lot of free article on there. I have a few.
We do a free session every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific. Sometimes they're English, sometimes they're Chinese, because we have a large Chinese following as well as English following. So we tend to alternate those, but they're free. And it's a great opportunity for people who just want to tap in, whatever the topic is. And if you sign up for a free membership, you'll always get alerted, what's coming up in the pipeline.
Yeah, and we have one coming next Tuesday. I'll be talking about networking. So
there you go.
And you can see it on the event page once we set it up.
Yeah, networking is a really big one. I know that we chatted about this briefly, but it's still an art that takes a long time, I think, in order to develop a good social network and business network.
Yeah, you can go to the website. Actually, a few articles on there on networking. And those are the elements I'll be talking about next week. But you don't have to be there next week. You can read the article and let me know.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. Thanks again to George. Thank you again, Mark, for presenting and having this time to chat with everybody.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Jose Manuel.
Thank you, George.
Thank you,
and Mark.
See everybody next time.
Bye-bye.